The White House has become a racist symbol, just like the Confederate statues, and it needs to be repainted and given a new name that reflects today's America. Welcome to The Naked Truth on the USA Podcast channel, an authentic Yankee program where I share important opinions around the USA that impact all Americans, not just some. From a Hispanic point of view, I'm Juan Andres, also known as Señor USA. I've lived in the United States, and I've been very happy, very fortunate. I'm an immigrant, but my discomfort started with the divisiveness and the extreme racism that's become normal in the minds of people that think that they're better than the rest of us Americans. And unfortunately, this has been given an importance by one man that, in my opinion, I feel he soiled the word white like never before in history. He has turned the symbol of American democracy, the White House, into a white supremacist monument. And thus, in my opinion, the word white in White House has to be changed. And the color of the building has to be changed, just to reflect the real America that exists today. It's no longer 100% white. When the founders had an idea of what they wanted to develop in this beautiful land that we all cherish and love, and some of us that have lived abroad and had the luck of being able to immigrate legally to the United States. And if I would have come from a poor family, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish that. The only way that I would have been able to come to America is to come illegally, because I wouldn't have the money to be able to do that. But I came from a middle-class family, and I had the opportunity to come in, the luxury of being able to come in legally. And when I first came here, wow, I didn't want to be white, but I wanted to be like whites. I wanted to have a nice home because I saw they had it. I saw that they owned beautiful corporations and made money, and they drove nice cars, and they dressed well. And when you opened magazines, they were featured in every single page. You went to the movies and you saw them, and you grew up going, I don't know how, but that's my role model. I want to be like that when I grow up. I don't know how I'm going to accomplish it. I'm going to have to work, but I want to get there. That's what I want to be. I want to have what whites have. That's all changed. If you speak to most Hispanics, and probably a lot of African Americans, they'll tell you that things have changed, and they didn't cause the change. The change came from outside our communities. We're peaceful people. What have you ever heard of a Hispanic uprising? In all the years that you've ever thought, have you ever heard of Hispanics burning down buildings or causing anybody any duress? I mean, in every society, there's going to be a few problematic people. They get arrested and they get processed and they get deported, or they get whatever they deserve, and rightfully so, because it happens in every society. But generally, as a whole, you've never heard of Hispanics going down the street and threatening people and shooting people, and like I've seen on television, of whites going down the street with, military style arms, shooting people in the middle of the street with some excuse that because they were causing problems to property, that now you have the right to kill them? And then the leaders in the country. You know, I was okay with everything until I saw a man coming down an escalator one day using language that offended me. And I said to myself, oh my God. You know, this one man first soiled the image of democracy on June 1st, 2020, when he had law enforcement remove and gas peaceful minority blacks and brown protesters from Lafayette Park in Washington, D.C. So this one man could have his picture taken holding a Bible in his hand in front of St. John's Episcopal Church. You know, it's just ridiculous. Ridiculous that this is allowed to happen. But when you give power to people that don't know how to respect power, that abuse it and use it for their personal gain, it causes a tremendous amount of problems in the country. And it divides the whole nation. Slowly, what's happening within the minority community is that the word white is slowly becoming the N-word that many Hispanics are using. And that's sad, because it used to be a glorious word. Everybody wanted to be like the predominant culture in the country. And that's slowly eroding. You don't know how this changes everything for centuries to come if we don't put a halt to all this divisiveness and what I consider personally evil. That day, the removal of black and brown minorities so a white man could have his picture taken is as racist as the Confederate statues that are slowly being removed throughout the country. And not only because they're offensive to the people that suffered during the Confederacy, but stop to think of it, because it continues to give present-day supremacists a symbol of superiority that must be taken away. You know, even, however, I think it's necessary that it be taken away from them, so they can come to the realization that they're no longer supreme. They're Americans. And America is a melting pot. It's all of us. It's America united. Not a supreme group of people trying to dominate the rest. That's not the America that everybody's been fighting for a long, long time. The colonists fought with the suppressors, Britain, United Kingdom, because they were being suppressed. America has always been about trying to be better, trying to get equality, trying to get a just system of government that treats you properly. And that's what minorities want. The only thing is that we don't cause revolutions like initially the founders of this country had to, because they were fighting a nation. And we don't want to destroy the nation we love. We want to be part of it. But we're a melting pot nowadays. You know, as a servant of the people, this one man. We have to ask ourselves, what purpose did his Bible photo op serve to help the American people, other than show that he was a white symbol of supremacy? Just stop to think of it. What was the purpose? A religious purpose? He didn't even open it. He didn't even read a verse from it. It was just senseless. Just a show of power. To rile up his base. Shame on him. And the officials that enabled him to show to the world on July the 30th, 2019, how confused he was by mistakenly saying, "I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world." Look it up. Look it up on Google if you want to. It's easy. It's easy to find that statement. I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world. And also proclaiming that same day that the real racist was a man called Reverend Al Sharpton. He was the real racist. Now, as ludicrous as this sounds, there are still 100 million of his loving groupies who thoughtlessly follow this entertainer turned president of the United States. That sounded most of the time like a carnival barker, standing in front of a bearded lady's tent, asking his adoring fans to attack the tent. Hang the lady. Now, the barker won't have a job without the tent and the lady, but the barker is not smart enough to think of that. He just wants the power of knowing that people will do what he wants them to do. He doesn't care what damage he causes, and he doesn't think of the consequences that he won't be able to make any money after the tent is burned and the bearded lady is hanged or disappears. He just wants his fans to attack. Who cares? Makes me feel good. Makes me feel powerful. And on July 2021, this same one white man soiled the word white in White House forever when he spoke at CPAC in Dallas, Texas. Listen to how he describes the White House as a symbol of white supremacy.
We will take back the House. We will take back the Senate. And then, after witnessing all that has gone wrong in our country in such a short period of time, with our borders, with our economy, with crime, we will take back that glorious White House that sits so majestically in our nation's capital. Beautiful White House, that's small letters, White House, that beautiful White House. And it is the most beautiful house of all. Working together, we will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, you just heard what the president had to say. And in case you didn't have an opportunity to understand it or might have missed it, I will point it out. During his speech, if you can call it a speech, I call it carnival barking. But in any case, he described a beautiful White House on a hill. And that's all fantastic. We agree to that point. Where we don't agree is when he said White House with a small W. That is what they call a dog whistle. That's a sign for the people that know what that means to get all excited and root for him and jump up and down and feel good about themselves. Because when you take the capital out of white and the capital out of house, and you make it a small letter, White House, it means that it's a house for white people. And what he's alluding to is that there was a Negro president in there before. That's the dog whistle. And if you listen to what he said, he implies that he's not going to allow that to happen again. Now, you can listen to what he has to say again and check to see if you understand it the way I did. Most Hispanics do. And if you really listen to what he has to say and you listen to the reaction of the crowd, you'll understand that that's exactly what he was doing. And that's why you hear on television a lot of times the term dog whistle. But this further divides us. At this point, he not only tells us he's intent on returning to the White House to further divide us, but also to ensure that no Negro or person of color will ever live there again, because he will not allow it. How dare him say he will not allow it? How dare him say that? You know, forget the fact that there's elections in this country, which the Republicans wants to change. They want to change the government to an autocratic government, which is basically the government telling the people what to do instead of the people telling the government what to do through their representatives. They want to reverse it all so they can have control. They can change the laws, and then all of a sudden voting might be illegal, or they might set up a process where the vote doesn't mean anything, or they might turn around and say that anything's possible when you have leadership from the top down instead of from the bottom up, because it doesn't represent the bottom, which is over 330 million people. They will no longer count. But even beyond that, enslaved laborers participated at every stage of building construction, from the quarrying and transportation of stone to the construction of the executive mansion. Yeah, the White House. They worked alongside European craftsmen, white wage laborers, and other free African American wage laborers at that time. Stonemason Colin Williamson trained enslaved people on the spot at the government's quarry at Aquia, Virginia. Enslaved people quarried and cut the rough stone that was later dressed and laid by Scottish masons to erect the walls of the president's house. The slaves joined a workforce that included local white laborers and artisans from Maryland and Virginia, as well as immigrants from Ireland, Scotland, and other European nations. The May of 1795 payroll list lists the carpenters who worked on the president's house. And that's how we know. The government didn't own slaves. The government did, though, hire out enslaved laborers or hire enslaved laborers from their owners. And names like Peter without a last name, Ben without a last name, Daniel without a last name, and Harry without a last name were noted. And we know that they're slave because after those names came the information that said owned by James Hoban. Owned by James Hoban. So we know that they're slaves. We know that they participated. The White House Historical Association website says that when planners struggled to recruit European labor, they turned to African Americans, enslaved and free, to provide the bulk of labor that built the White House, the United States Capitol, and other early government buildings, not just that one. And up until the Civil War, all the servants at the White House were slaves. The government didn't pay for the employees. The president had to bring in his own, the people to serve him, and he paid for it out of pocket. So he brought his slaves with him up until the Civil War, up until Abraham Lincoln. In Michelle Obama's speech during the first day of the Democratic National Convention, one sentence in particular garnered more attention and controversy than anything else she said that day, or anyone else said that day. It upset people. And this is what she said. That is the story of this country, the story that has brought me to this stage tonight, the story of generations of people who felt the lash of bondage, the shame of servitude, the sting of segregation, but who kept on striving and hoping and doing what needed to be done, so that today I wake up every morning in a house that was built by slaves. The name white has to, in my opinion, be removed from the name White House. After this one ex-president has soiled and damaged the word to become the N-word that many minorities are using when they refer to white people. That is not good for the country, not good for anyone, that there's that much resentment. Are we going to get to the point that we have to say the W word? We won't be able to say white anymore because it's offensive? Because after they use it and you get the description and it's done over generations or the next 20 or 30 years, you will become ashamed to be called white, or some of you will. The supremacists won't, but some of you will, because you don't want to be associated with a supremacist. When that word becomes the word of a supremacist movement, and you're a reasonable American, a good American that loves this country, and you don't want to be identified with them, you won't want to be called white. And that's why this is dangerous. You say, oh, that can't happen. Do you remember generations ago? Well, within my lifetime, when I was a child and I first came to this country, you could say, I feel gay this morning. And it didn't mean anything other than I felt happy. But in a live language that changes and grows and evolves, the word gay changed. It became the identity of a group of people. They usurped the word. They used the word so often that it became an identity of this one group of people that we no longer feel comfortable saying, I feel gay. Because people might misinterpret it and think that we belong to another group that we don't belong to. That's what's going to happen to white. This is not a joke. The name white, for the time being, has to be removed from the word White House to show that we're changing, that we have a shameful history. It's okay. So we made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Nations make mistakes. Religions make mistakes. You name it. As long as human beings are involved, there's going to be mistakes. So what's the big deal? We made mistakes, but when we know what those mistakes are and we keep doing them over and over, regardless of who we hurt, even though we know that we shouldn't be doing it because we're going to be hurting people, then it's not a coincidence. It's shameful. It's shameful that white supremacists, like the previous resident of this house, wants to continue propagating white supremacy. If white supremacy is to be controlled for the good of the country, then its most racist symbol, the White House, must be renamed. What that is, the people can decide. I think a great name would be the People's House. That's what it really is. And it also lets people know it doesn't belong to just one group of people. It belongs to everybody. It should be called the People's House. And it is recognized as the People's House, but it's not called that. And it should be repainted to a color that represents America today. What I think is a beautiful, non-white, quadroon beige color. Because if you take the melting pot of America and you put a couple of drops of red, 5 drops of brown, 3 blocks of black, and 10 blocks of white, drops of white, or 12 drops of white, and you mix it up, you're going to come up with a non-white quadroon, gorgeous beige color that offends no one. And no one can usurp and take that word white and make it dirty because it's not being used anymore. Because that word is becoming the N-word. Quietly, slowly, sneaking in to the minds and expressions of Americans here in the United States. We no longer do what we used to do 20, 30 years ago. Bleach our hair so people would think that we're white. We no longer run to the grocery store and buy bleach to bleach our skin so we can be a shade lighter because we want to be like the people that lead this country and have made it successful. We're not doing that anymore. And less African Americans are straightening their hair so their hair can look like a European person. Less. There was a time when practically every black woman would do that. There was a time when practically every black man, especially if successful, would do that. Now they'd rather shave their hair than straighten it to look white, or at least resemble the hair of a white person. Have you ever stopped to think of that? Why is that change happening? Why the people that wanted to be as successful and look like me no longer want to do that? They don't want to dress like me anymore. They don't put on suits with ties, and they create their own clothing, and then you copy them. You pull your pants down and show your underwear. Where do you think that started? It didn't start in the white community. Okay? Rock and roll. Where do you think the Beatles learned about their music? Where do you think the Rolling Stones learned about their music if it wasn't in the black community and the Hispanic community? Slowly, you are starting to adapt to who we are. But there's a group of 100 million people that don't let the process grow. Don't let the change come naturally to this country, which needs to happen. The name white that this one man has soiled in the minds of many Americans must be removed from the White House. It should be called the People's House. Furthermore, we must protect the further deterioration of the word white by extremists and supremacists. As I explained, there was a time when I looked up to whites as a role model. I wanted to reach those levels of success and looks. Up until coming down the escalators, this one man referred to my people as rapists and murderers. It was so unexpected. It was so vulgar. It was so inconsiderate. It was so crass. It was so common. It was so indecent that it's like a neighbor that you wanted to emulate because he's successful, he has a nice home, he has a nice car, he has a beautiful family, and you say, I'm going to get there someday. And one day, out of the clear blue sky, he comes out of the yard, and you're working in your yard, and he looks at you and he insults you for no reason at all, without cause. And you're shocked. You go, why did he do that? And your feelings change. You're a human being. Your feelings change. And you come out the next morning and you start changing from that moment on in. And a year later, you don't want to speak to him. You don't want to be rude. But whenever he comes out in the yard, you avoid to go out in the yard. Or if you're walking down the street, you'll cross over to the other side of the street. Or you'll turn around and give him your back and walk in the opposite direction. You don't want communications with him anymore. Is that what we're looking for? That kind of divisiveness where we don't talk to one another anymore? Where we're not communicating anymore because you're so offensive? You elect leaders that permit this? How is that good for the country? How is that good for the corporations? The corporations need to hire us. We need to keep growing. We need to keep labor costs within reason, so we can compete on the world market with countries that are producing things cheaper than we are. We need to do it more efficiently, and we have to have the labor at a reasonable price to be able to compete and remain the most powerful economy in the world. We can't do that without immigrants. Let's not be ridiculous. This is an intelligent country. So here I am now looking at my neighbor as a foe. That is not good for America. A good first step is rename the White House the People's House as it should be named, and change the color from white to a beautiful quadroon beige color that represents the melting pot of this country that is no longer 100% white. It never was, but when it was first established, only white males could vote. And all decisions were made on that basis. As politicians, they decided that they needed to please their constituency. And subconsciously, they made those decisions. Those decisions don't apply any longer. The country's becoming more divisive, and we need to protect it because we love it. You love it, and I love it. And we need to protect it. But we have to be considerate of one another. And we have to be mindful of what we used to do in the past that was acceptable, realizing that it no longer is. I'm Juan Andres, also known as Senor USA, a proud Hispanic American. On this program, The Naked Truth, this is an authentic Yankee program. Thank you for listening to me, and see you next time on the next program.